welcome to Women in the Middle Entrepreneurs, the podcast that gives you an unfiltered, behind-the-scenes look at what it's really like being a woman in the middle who's over 50 and following her entrepreneurial dreams. Grab a superhero cape, girlfriend, because you deserve one. I'm your host, Master Certified Life Coach and Midlife Mentor, Suzy Rosenstein, and I am excited to inspire you with interviews that feature all of this midlife amazingness. Let's go. Hey there, welcome back to the show. Today we have another really exciting interview ahead of us about helping small business owners realize their vision for their business, their family, and their community. Today you'll be meeting Natalia Zacharin, a woman in the middle entrepreneur who works with small business owners to help them get organized. And she also reviews and analyzes their numbers so they can make better decisions. Those scary numbers. Welcome to the show, Natalia. How are you? Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here today.
Oh, me too. I am really glad you're here because this is a really important thing we're going to talk about. I mean, I am one of those gals who doesn't like numbers. So when I saw your application, I got pretty excited. So I know we're going to have a great conversation about your midlife entrepreneur story. We're going to be talking about your business and what's going really well, and also what midlife issues might be getting in your way to some extent and might be challenging for you in your life as well as being a business owner. So let's start out with a nice juicy one. How old are you? How long have you been an entrepreneur? A little bit about your story, your journey, and of course, what it is you do in the world. So take it away.
Sure. So I am 53 years old. I will be 54 in a couple of months. And I started my business officially, got my first client in January 2019. So I just established my LLC. Actually, I didn't even establish my LLC. I got my bank account and my EIN in late 2018. And so here we are about 4.5 years later. And we've got 5 employees, soon to be 7 at this point. And I thought that, and when I started, that it would just be a side gig. I needed some extra cash. I wasn't doing that well with the job that I had in there for a long time, and there were no options for me to grow. I wasn't making enough money. And so this was totally off the cuff and not anything I ever thought I would be doing. I'm a single mom. So I've been single for more than a decade. And it's been that in and of itself, being a middle-aged single mom is a journey in and of itself. And there's a lot to talk about there, but we'll focus on the business and everything else. So it's been a tremendous journey. So why did I start the business? Mostly out of necessity. I was desperate, just flat out honesty. My daughter needed more time for me to spend at home. I had a very long commute. It took me about an hour each way to get to work. And then I also was not really making quite enough to make ends meet. And so those two combinations really made it very difficult at that time. And I think a lot of single parents or any parent struggles with those two things. So I had actually just met someone I was dating, and I met someone online. It does work. If anybody ever wants to meet anybody online, it can work. And he owned his own business. He had actually owned several. And he was a coach for other accountants to start their own businesses. And I was sitting in a cafe with him one day, and he said, "Why don't you start your own business?" Because we were talking about how I was looking for other work. I wasn't getting interviews. And so I thought, "Are you crazy? I don't know how to do anything." And he said, "You can start an accounting business." And I thought, "Oh, I could hire an accountant and maybe charge enough to get paid for it." And he said, "Well, yeah, you could do that, but then you won't really be making any money at first. You kind of need to know what's happening and what's going on." So funny thing is, I had no experience in accounting, and I have no I was an invoicing clerk. And so I thought, oh, okay. He actually sent me this program to help you start your own business that he had from his coaching. And you can get any of these programs anywhere. And I just started going through the program, and I figured at any point I could just stop and maybe it'll just help me to get another job, maybe get a job in sales because I had a sales background. So I just kept going through this program and going through the motions and doing the things. And yes, a lot of it was very uncomfortable where you have to start contacting people and talking to people and setting things up, teaching myself QuickBooks online. And so I didn't know any better to say, I don't want to do this. It's too uncomfortable. I was just very desperate at getting out of my situation and just started doing it. And before I knew it, I think we started in October. I started with that program. In January, I landed my first client.
So I have to tell you, my jaw is hurting right now. I'm smiling so hard. I mean, I know as a listener, you can't see what's happening here, but Natalia's telling this story and like this takes so much courage, but you felt desperate. So you probably didn't even realize how courageous you were being. And you're an accidental entrepreneur, really.
Yes.
And what an interesting thing that you met somebody who knew how to help you take a very interesting next step. No guarantees, but you were so open to it that you dove in. Like so many people would never do that. They would be, that is a crazy idea. I don't know who you think you're sitting here with right now, having coffee or whatever it is. That idea is not for me, but you did it. Oh my God.
I don't know.
So interesting.
Yes. And I look back and I think, I don't know why, except that I was desperate to get out of my situation. And sometimes we get to a point where we're just done and we want something else to happen.
Yeah.
And there were many, many times where I cried and I'm like, this isn't working. And I wanted to give up. And I would think to myself, but what's there to give up? There's nothing else out there for me that's working right now. So just keep going. So every time I wanted to give up, I just kept going. I would dry my tears and I would just keep going. I did a lot of crying that first year, to be honest.
Don't we all? I mean, seriously though, but you did it. And you by not even having that accounting background, it's fascinating. And you did it anyway. Honestly, I'm very impressed. I wasn't, when I read applications, I never really know what the real story is. Like there's so many layers to what's really going on. And I'm just fascinated with stories, and your story is very interesting. So,
Thank you.
You had to be open to it. You had to be open to it. And the other thing is there's also this time when we have this realization, and it happens for everybody. Well, it doesn't happen for everybody, It happens for people at different phases in their life when they realize that if they don't make something happen, nothing will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have to create change. We have to create opportunity, and just waiting for something amazing or good or some giant opportunity or whatever to happen to us. That's not how we're going to take control of our lives and really make some magic. So I don't know. You say you don't know what's happening, but I have a feeling that realization was part of it.
I think at first I was just sick of it and I wanted to change. And then I realized I don't want to be a victim anymore.
Yeah.
I had to change a lot of the negative self-talk. I didn't know how much negative self-talk I had until I realized that I need to change that. So it had been a journey. Entrepreneurship for me has been the most difficult thing I've ever had to do. It's definitely in competition with being a parent. And I think in some ways, parenting is easier in some ways because it just seems more gradual. Entrepreneurship is not gradual at all. It's just sink or swim. You're thrown in the fire. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, parts of it, I guess, are gradual. It really also depends on your risk tolerance, I find.
Yes.
How much you want to invest, knowing there's no guarantee in whatever thing it is that you're considering. Yeah. You're really betting on yourself.
And I think if you just keep going, you don't give up, then you can bet on yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Listen to all of your wisdom. Listen to this. Okay. So tell me then, by starting that accounting firm, that doesn't quite explain everything that you do. So then you started to become more focused. Tell us about that.
Right. So I taught myself QuickBooks Online, and then I started seeing patterns of when I'm getting clients, a lot of people needing help. I started telling everybody. So I have a sales background from many years ago. So before that, about 10, 15 years before that, I was in sales. And I started remembering the leave no stone unturned type of mentality. So I would tell everybody what I did. I'd have someone come over to fix my house, some contractor, and I'd say, hey, do you need an accountant? Like I'd meet people in the store and say, hey, do you need an accountant? So I just all of my friends knew. I just started really telling everybody and living that life. And I think that the most important thing is also training yourself. So I did a tremendous amount of reading, a tremendous amount of training, and I started to see a lot of patterns of what people needed. So at this point, it keeps evolving, but it's evolved into something I feel like it's pretty grand and very different than most other firms because we're very open-minded and we are just constantly trying to find solutions for entrepreneurs. So what do? We do a lot of the regular stuff that most accounting firms do. We do the bookkeeping, which is like the monthly accounting, month-end close stuff. We set people up on QuickBooks. We organize everything for them. We're really specialized in collaborating and doing everything virtually. So we were virtual pre-COVID. So we know that entrepreneurs are super busy and we figured out ways to really streamline, automate, and collaborate and make it as easy for them as possible. We white glove the service. So we do everything for them. And then we also really started adding other services that were important, like connecting, if they've got other ERP systems or CRMs, connecting them or looking into them so that we create financial reports that really make sense. And there's a disconnect between a typical CPA and a typical bookkeeper, whereas the bookkeeper does the bookkeeping, which is, by the way, not data entry, and the CPA does the tax compliance. But the CPA doesn't really know how to do bookkeeping, and the bookkeeper doesn't know how to read financial statements. So I saw that there was a need to be in the middle and to be a liaison for both. And so we specialize in creating the bookkeeping with an eye for what does it need, what purpose does it give us, and what does it need to show us and why, so that the business owner can make the best decisions going forward. And that's really what we started doing.
Oh my God. Honestly, this is brilliant. I think it's because you weren't an accountant that you were able to have this sales and marketing and customer service focus.
Yes.
It was because you were above, the weeds, really.
And I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't have any preconceived notions.
Right. Fascinating on so many. Your story's great. It really fascinating on so many levels. And you're right. Entrepreneurs are confused and overwhelmed when it comes to this sort of thing, unless you had a natural interest in it or experience with it. But most of the people I know, including myself, were incredibly overwhelmed and it caused tears.
Yes.
It caused tears. One thing that got in my way was thinking that I should be able to do it myself because my husband does himself. Completely different business. But I really had that thought that if he could do it, I should be able to do it. And then there was something wrong with me because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
There was so much I didn't know. And it is so fast paced. So
it is fast paced. There's a lot of room for error because you're not just dealing with accounting, you're also dealing with the software and how it reacts. And entrepreneurs need to have time to make money. You should not be spending your time on doing your own books. It's a great thing to outsource so that you can really focus on building revenue. And just as a point, what I realized really quickly, everything turned to, so the biggest limitation for us is time. It's not how much we learn. It's not what we know, because we can learn, especially now with the internet, we can learn very quickly. But it's time, and time is the most valuable. So that one of the first things I did was I hired a house cleaner. And I hired someone to mow the lawn because I owned a house at the time. And I couldn't even afford them. But I figured in the time that it would take me to do those functions, that I could have closed a new client. And that's how I started thinking about everything, is building revenue. What do I need to make my time more impactful? And so that's outsourcing. So the first thing, I know how to scrub my own toilets, just like, if you know how to do your own accounting, should you? Should I be scrubbing my own toilets when I should be probably building the business? And that's what I did. I focused on that.
Bam. Okay. Another thing that you have in your notes is that you describe your ultimate goal is to help the small business entrepreneurs, help them realize their vision for their business, their family, and their community. So even thinking about it that way, an accounting firm thinking about that, that's different.
Yes. And we're all about building wealth, reducing taxes, and figuring out how to build your business so that it's actually an asset, and possibly a sellable asset. It's going to be the biggest investment that you make in time and money, probably in your life. So we consider all of those aspects. And I forgot what I was going to say, but
it's okay. That happens all the time on a midlife podcast.
Yes, I know. Yeah, exactly. Community. So I really believe in, not to sound too woo-woo or anything like that. I do believe in the universe and karma and putting good things out there. I did a lot of community work and volunteer work definitely when I was married. And even I did so when I was a single mom and employed by someone else. When I started my own business, I had to stop all of my volunteer work. You have to make sacrifices. It's just the way that it is. And so I'm very fortunate now that we've grown a tremendous amount and we're doing quite well. And one of my biggest goals is to give back. So we actually donate 1% of gross revenue every month to a charity. It's a big deal for me. And it's great. Every time I feel like I'm overwhelmed, I feel like I can't close any clients because we all have dry spells, right? So
Right.
every time like I have any of those feelings, like, why am I doing this? I actually go and I donate money or time. I practice gratitude or I donate. And I feel like that just puts me right back into perspective and it really helps me to keep going.
Oh, that's so good. That's really good. All right. Now, thank you for sharing all of that. And I love to dive into what is really going on in the world of midlife colliding with your ability to run your business the way you want to. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about those the classic midlife issues and how they're showing up for you.
So classic midlife issues. The first midlife issue was, I think, the fact that I was a single mom and I was in my late 40s when things were not going well for me in the corporate world. I don't think that there's a lot of respect for women that are in midlife. I really don't. So that was one of the things. And I could see when I wanted to move up or do something different that it just wasn't connecting for them.
Hmm.
So that was the first thing. The second thing is, of course, there's so many changes in midlife. Many of us get divorced or remarried or lose our husbands. So there's a lot of change for women in midlife. Of course, there's the whole menopause thing. And there's a lot of discomfort. You're exhausted. Things aren't feeling the same way. You're changing. You don't know what's happening. And then if you have children, they're getting to a certain age, usually at that time also, where they're becoming more challenging because they're becoming adults or semi-adults and they're becoming more challenging. So there's just so much going on there.
When you went through menopause, or maybe you're still going through it, I don't know. But like, which of the menopause symptoms really got in your way?
Oh my gosh, everything. So I didn't realize, I started going through menopause really early. One of the things that it made my body completely go berserk. And I had been in a very bad marriage and it was very stressful. And all of that stress, I guess, had accumulated over the years. And when I hit menopause, my body just went into overdrive. I have an autoimmune, so that went completely into overdrive. I started getting very, very sick constantly while trying to run a business and be a single mom. And I think the biggest things were I gave up a lot to have the business, and then the rest of the time I can spend with my child or my family. So I gave a lot up of like my own hobbies. I used to dance. I used to work out a lot. The thing I regretted was I did give up working out for quite some time. And that is one of the things that really helped me to keep my energy and keep healthy so that I could run the business. So I think that taking time for yourself, and for me, taking time for myself means to take care of myself, take walks often, exercise often. I do yoga, meditation. So those healthy things are extremely important when you're going through a lot of physical changes. And then being able to make money now, because we were actually on Medicare back in 2018-19 because we were not doing well at all. And now having the ability to have the money to pay for better healthcare, it has been a blessing I didn't even think of when I started.
You've really this hasn't been much time at all for you to turn things around that quickly. That's really something, but not appreciating that paying for better healthcare was something as like a bonus that you hadn't really considered. Wow.
Yeah. Better healthcare, better doctors, some healthcare that doesn't accept insurance. Sometimes it's better. I hate to say it, but that's, I go outside of insurance and it doesn't really matter to me anymore because I can really find what's the best and someone that can really optimize. So I'm not looking for someone who is just giving me advice on and comparing me to the rest of the country, because I don't know if the average person is all that healthy. They definitely don't have an optimized health. I want them to optimize me. So that's what we look at, is optimizing everything that we possibly can. And and then the exercise is a big thing. Weightlifting. I do a lot of lifting weights.
It's so interesting that you gave it up that you gave it up, that was one of the things that was in your negotiable column.
Yes, I think because I was just running out of time. I didn't give it up for a long time. I still worked out. And that had been one of the things I never gave up. Even no matter how bad the money was, I always found a way to work out or to go to the gym. That was my non-negotiable. I would rather eat sardines and stop drinking wine and not have, fabric softener sheets, because I gave up a lot of stuff to be able to afford to go to a gym. But I always went to the gym. And then suddenly in 2019, I was still working full time for part of that year until I could transition. A lot of things were happening with my child. It was very transitional. She was in high school, so that middle school and then high school. So that was a hard time for her as well. And I just couldn't do it all. I started just slowly giving things up. And I would say, oof, I could go to the gym now, or I could finish this work and keep working and get a lot more done. And that's how I started justifying it to myself.
Right. It's a slippery slope. And sometimes there are times like that where you do have to make tough choices.
Yes.
Also, it's interesting what you said about your kid. We do tend to think when we're making plans about the future that little kids, that's where all the time intensive activity is as a parent. And when they're older, whatever, things get better. But little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. And just the ability to be available to talk and to understand when the kids are more likely to talk. Yeah. It's really just being more available. And sometimes it's, the car ride seems to be one of the best times to talk.
Exactly.
So if you don't have that time with your kid, you can really miss out on the kind of time that is really useful in some of those tougher transition moments, phases, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, that's a tricky one because you can't predict it.
Just being home. I mean, I work a lot. I'm on Zooms all day, but just the fact that I'm here, I think is enough. Because if they need anything, if my daughter needs anything, she can knock on the door or she can send me a quick text. And she's a lot older now. But I think the being away, commuting an hour, being so far away was really tough on both of us because I couldn't be there quickly if she needed anything.
And in your notes, you also mentioned your ex-husband and getting over some of those habits the way you were thinking.
Yes. So I mentioned the marriage was not a good marriage. And there was, it was actually, I felt like I would never get out. It was a pretty abusive situation. And I finally decided that I needed to get out, but I had been with him for 20 years. So 16 years of marriage and 4 years of dating before that. And I didn't realize how gradually a lot of those thoughts and those patterns had just entered my mind. And when he was gone, so he was very angry all the time and yelled a lot. And when he left, we were still yelling. And I'm like, I remember one day realizing about 2 weeks later, like, why are we yelling? He's not even here yelling. Like, why are we yelling at this point?
That's so fascinating. And that's just a really big reminder that we get into these autopilot ways of behaving.
Yes.
And you don't even have the ability to watch yourself behaving a certain way to know that there is more choice. And when those inputs leave for whatever reason, and it's not just a marriage that you can have all this negative stuff, you do have more choice. Thank goodness you realized that.
It took a really long time. That was, I think, part of I feel like I'm in a 2-part journey from after the divorce. The first part was just to get myself, felt like I had lived under a rock and I needed to get myself to almost feel like I was a human again. And then the second part was to fix myself financially. And the first part was I literally left that marriage feeling like I was nothing. I was stupid, ugly, old. No one wanted to hang out with me. Completely, I just didn't feel like I had any worth at all as a human being. And that took a very long time of just slowly fixing that. And I think that fixing it physically first is what helped everything else come. So, but what I mean physically first is the exercise. Exercising on a regular basis was really one of the things that really helped me to fix my mindset. When my soon-to-be ex, when he moved out at that time, my next door neighbor was actually a personal trainer. And, having a little kid who's like 8 years old, I can't leave for the gym because I'm barely can make it to work. And she has daycare and all kinds of stuff going on at that point. So I asked my next door neighbor if she would just take me on as a client really early in the morning for a very reduced rate. And she agreed. And that was amazing. And I would leave the house. I still can't believe I did this. I did it for years and years and years. I would leave the house at 5:30 in the morning to be home before 7 before I had to wake her up for school. And then as she got older and I had to get her to school even earlier, I would even go earlier. And I did it for years. It's doable for anybody.
Wow. So focused on creating what you wanted, which you knew is what you needed.
Yes. So it's been like a journey physically, emotionally, for health, and then financially. And, I want to tell anybody who's in a situation, you don't have to do it all at once. Just compartmentalize, do something, and just start with something. Start with that first habit. Maybe it's stop the negative thinking. I couldn't stop my negative thinking. I had to start exercising first in order to start getting control of that.
I'm kind of speechless watching you, hearing your story. You've really accomplished a lot.
Thank
so
you.
Tell me about your observations of being an older woman and how it affects being an entrepreneur. And I'm not saying an old woman. I'm just saying, we are older than we were yesterday. So
Yes.
Being a woman, you mentioned that you started to notice it in the corporate setting. I've certainly heard that before. How else have you kind of seen it? Or maybe you don't see it?
I think what's interesting is a lot of it was possibly that I did not have enough knowledge and enough confidence. So it was a combination of those two things, because I started seeing this transition from being nervous, being on calls with all these entrepreneurs and trying to help them, because we transitioned out of just doing the accounting and started advisory CFO services pretty early on. So I felt like I was, we all have that imposter syndrome. I felt like a fraud at first. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But everybody, it's really interesting. I see ourselves on a timeline. So you're somewhere in the middle of your timeline, and there are plenty of people that are before that don't have the knowledge that you have or can't focus on that knowledge. So there's always some way you can help people. And then you can always accelerate your learning tremendously by reading, by taking classes. I'm in a mastermind. So I did a lot of accelerating exponential learning so that I can really help people, which in turn helps my own business as well. So when I would first get on calls, I remember being on a call with a bunch of accountants that had left one of the big four to go work for one of my clients. And they're all on Zoom and they're all looking at me to give them answers. And I'm thinking, I have no idea. Like, these are real CPAs. They're real professionals. They've been in the accounting industry for decades. They're all younger than me. They're like at the top of their careers. They just joined this fantastic startup, which is like an amazing opportunity for them. And they're all looking at me and waiting for me for answers. And I felt very worried and scared internally, but I was answering all the questions. Anything I didn't know, I'd say, I will find out. And I think if you just keep your cool, keep calm, you can definitely find things out. You don't have to know everything. You will learn more and more. So I just kept putting myself into situations and learning from them. And now I feel like I can sit in front of anybody. I can sit in front of a CPA who's been in business for 50 years and I can hold my own.
Look at you. That confidence definitely builds from doing it. And you had the ability to not be afraid and back off because you were uncomfortable, but you stayed.
I don't know why.
Well, that's what builds your confidence, right? Right.
Yes.
And then you end up looking for evidence. And I'm like, wow, I did know those questions. I did know the next step. I could do it. And I love what you said about being somewhere on your path. And as long as you're a little ahead, you can absolutely help people. I mean, that is so, so true. I've noticed it too. That's great information. And one thing that you said in your notes, and I've noticed this too, is at this point in our lives, we do have friends who are retiring. So what's that like for you?
So funny story. I was on a plane in 2019 and I was sitting next to a friend. We were actually at that time, I worked full time. I just started my business and I was still an executive director of a nonprofit. So we were taking the kids of the nonprofit on a trip to San Francisco. So I'm on a plane with one of my friends who is also an officer of the organization. And she asked me about the business I was starting. And she was a school teacher. and she had just retired. And so I told her a little bit about it, and she said, oh my word, I can't believe you're starting this. I'm so excited to be retired. And I remember thinking to myself, I just want to close my ears with my fingers and hum so that I can't hear her.
No.
Because not that she was saying anything bad, but my thought was, I want to be that. I want to retire. I don't want to have to do this. I've been working my whole life too. And I felt like the universe said it was so unfair at that moment. But honestly, if someone told you that they can make you a millionaire in a few short years, what would you do to do that? Now, I'm not saying that you need to do anything out of the ordinary or any black magic or anything evil. If you knew that if you worked really, really hard for just a few short years and you can turn your entire life around and build an asset that you could possibly sell later on, would you do it? And so I kept thinking about that. In the time, I would have to work anyway, whether it would be, working for minimum wage somewhere, which I felt like was my path, to be honest, or working for somewhere in corporate America. I would have to work for many, many years and potentially not even have enough for retirement, but I'd have more of a life. So I'd be 9 to 5, get home, wouldn't work in the evenings, wouldn't work weekends, and I would have, PTO. Now I work like a 14-hour day is normal. An 8-hour day is a half day for me. I work on the weekends. I answer things during the evenings. I haven't had a vacation where I'm completely turned off ever in the last 4 years. But I'll take a couple days here and there when I need it. But it's the drive of if I just do it a little bit longer, I don't have to do it forever again. And it's happening. So we actually went from, starting in 2019, and we just hit 7 figures this year, only 4 years. So
congratulations. That is so fast.
Yes.
Can you believe it? Like, seriously,
No.
That is fast.
Yes.
That is fast.
And it's just doing what's most impactful, listening. Like when we get advice, a lot of people don't take advice. I've been lucky where I don't know any better. I'll just do it. So taking good advice is good. And everything I do that helps my business, I can help other businesses. So there's like that 1-to-1 where it's really helpful. But also whenever I want to give up, I think it's just a few more years. Like I would be working anyway. I can't retire.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it was jarring for me too when I started to see 2 teacher friends retired. And then tonight there's something where a service that my husband uses, those guys are retiring. And it definitely is around us. And as entrepreneurs our age, most of us are gearing up.
Yes.
We're gearing up and we don't think like it's a certain date by which we need to retire. We're just like excited about opportunity and we're thinking about what might that look like? And it usually doesn't sound like retiring or feel like retiring. It's another level of the business, or we're involved in a different capacity. And right. Yes. It's so different.
It's very different. I find that I have a lot in common sometimes now with friends, unless they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
They don't understand the drive. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm going to be, I bought a firm last year. I acquired a firm. I'm planning on doing more acquisitions again. And they're like, why are you doing all this? It's so much work. Then I'm like, well, if I can get to 10 million, then selling is, 5 to 10 times revenue rather than just one-time revenue. So that's like the goal is my goal is actually get to 50 million if I can be in the top 400.
I do not see that a problem.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. But it's just at first, I think when you first start, it's a matter of saving yourself and making money or doing something you're passionate about. For me, it was saving my family and myself. Now it's a matter of it's exciting and challenging. And I think it keeps me really young. And I get to talk to people about really interesting things. And I can work from anywhere, which is great also. And it's just, I keep learning and learning and learning. I think it's staving off a lot of other issues. Definitely don't have time for depression. I don't have time to feel sorry for myself. If I do, it's like a couple seconds long at this point. I don't have time to age. Although I feel like it's aging me too. But
I have to tell you, your story, my jaw is still like my face, my cheeks. I'm just so delighted to hear your story. Natalia, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website. It's not great because I'm doing the work, but I do have a website. It's ZacharinConsulting.com. And it's got my email on there. It even has my phone number if you want to shoot me a text. But we would love to help you if you're starting out or if you've been in business a long time, or if you have any questions, just give us a holler. I think my calendar is even on there. So ZacharineConsulting.com. Then we also have a presence on Facebook, Zacharin Consulting, on Instagram as Grow Your Bottom Line, and on LinkedIn, Natalia Zacharin.
Amazing. Natalia, you're awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time from your busy day to share all of this. I really, really appreciate your journey and the creative way you've reimagined accounting and what an accounting firm can do and be for entrepreneurs. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's it for now. If you're listening and loving what you hear, please like and subscribe. Reviews are great too and much appreciated. And if you're a woman in the middle who's 50 or over and an entrepreneur and would also like to come on the show, please go to www.midlifeinterviews.com and fill out an application. I'd love to have you on to share your story. Thanks so much for listening. It's never too late for you to put yourself on your agenda. I'm Suzy Rosenstein, and I'll talk to you again soon. Now, real quick before we say goodbye, if you are connecting with this show, I'd love to invite you to a happiness breakthrough coaching session. It's my laser-focused coaching call that will help you get clear about what's getting in your way as a woman in the middle entrepreneur and confident about your next steps to more happiness in your next chapter. Head over to www.nextchapterbreakthrough.com. Talk to you soon.